Hello and welcome to the Gambling Files podcast. Slightly different intro this time because no Finton. What can I say? I think I found his upper limit for episodes. It's 2. Sad times. I'll keep this short and sweet, like my good self. So I'm your host, Jon Bruford, not joined by my co-host, Finton Costello. This episode, we are joined, where you'll see or hear possibly that I'm joined by the cat, the dog, and Jon Bourke, CEO of Encompass Digital and Value Privacy. And it's a really interesting conversation, genuinely. It's about player acquisition and finding players that you may not ordinarily have access to. And yeah, it's really, really interesting. And it just remains really to tell you about our beautiful, beautiful sponsors, our Tyrannosaur-like sponsors, in a good way, though. Clarion Gaming, organisers of ICE, which is obviously in Barcelona in 2025, and the magnificent Optimove, CRM software specialists. And as we always say with Optimove, click the link in the show notes, see the demo. If you see the demo, I basically guarantee you will think exactly what we thought, which is, holy cow, this is incredible, because it really is. I defy anybody to claim that it isn't. If you say that it's not, then you must be working for the competition, frankly. Click on the link clicking on the link as well. I mean, it helps to support podcasts like ours with an independent voice and, as Finton may have alluded in a previous episode, ADHD. I don't think so. Anyway, this is Jon Bourke, and enjoy the episode. So our third guest of a bumper week for the Gambling Files podcast, predictably, my shandy drinking co-host has not made it for the third in this monster session of information and talking about stuff. So you're saddled with just me. I say just me, but I'm joined by... Hang on, the dog's squeaking. I'm just going to have to tell the dog to fuck off. Dude, fuck off. Sorry, I've taught him all the swear words. Dude, fuck off. Anyway, he understands the escalation of swearing as well. He's actually very good. But anyway, sorry, I got sidetracked. So, so I'm joined by Jon Bourke, CEO. I just said Bourke, didn't I? I didn't feel like I said that right, but I'm going to stick with it. CEO of the beautifully named companies Encompass Digital and Value Privacy. Now, Jon, did you get your kids to name those companies, or did you come up with those names?
No, we used an amazingly talented creative, but unfortunately we did it too late on a Thursday evening. And but we had promised to stick with it and live with it. So here we are 15 years later, constantly considering rebrands, but we shall see.
Well, my kids named the cat, and the cat's name is subsequently Bernard Pickle. So, I mean, Bernard Pickle would be a good name for a business. People might think you made pickle. Oh, and in America, everybody'd be like Bernard Pickle. Bernard Pickle.
It would make it sound like a private equity firm or a group of lawyers. That's what that name would really evoke.
Neither of which would be anything good. I mean, I've actually heard stories, anecdotal, I admit, but I believe that they're true, of investment bankers who've been asked, when they're out and about in a bar having a few drinks, people are, what do you guys do for a living? And they've said, oh, we're pedophiles, because they don't want to admit that they're investment bankers.
I think that's a very good defensive movement on their part. And the other thing is they're likely to be chased down the street by a screaming mob. So I think it's quite a sensible
Definitely. It will certainly avoid that, won't it? There's that brilliant story from if I remember correctly, it was from Portsmouth, a coastal town in the UK. Actually, Portsmouth might be a city, but anyway, a conurbation. I don't know, whatever you want to call it, where an angry mob burned down a building because somebody didn't understand what a pediatrician was. Like
that
somebody's
could
going to
be
put a
an
sign up that says "Kitty Fiddler." I mean, for fuck's sake.
well, I do live on the east coast of the US and I do travel, and I could imagine that story in certain parts of the Midwest, but I don't want to offend anybody with that comment. But I could certainly see that happening.
I'm happy to offend everybody, so I'll just crack on with that. So John, we've talked a little, we've messaged a little bit. What we haven't messaged about prior to this recording is what we're going to talk about or what your companies do. So I have no idea what we're talking about right now. So this feels like a loot box or something along those lines. It's like, what are we going to get? Is it going to be something good or is it going to be something shit? But make it good, please.
So what we're focused on is monetization of first party data. So currently, data is this wildly undervalued asset. Everybody has it, everybody uses it, and no one's making the proper revenue coming out of it. So we have data about players, we have data about behaviors, we have data about different events. We have all these different kind of things. Now, there's a word that I think you're going to like a lot. It's called
Wanker.
psychographic. No, no, very close though.
Psychographic.
It's psychographic. And a psychographic is something that's collected as data, and it will tell you things about you that you don't know about your predilection to buy something or to do something online. So, as an example, if you come along and you register on an app, you give them your name, your gender, your location, whatever else it is, I can take that data and I can match it with 1,000 or 2,000 things that you don't know about yourself. Data that's been captured from everybody, that big black cloud out there. So I will know that if I give you a particular message and it's a Tuesday, the wind is blowing from the south, the dog is having a pee up against the door, and your car is red, you're 5 times more likely to place a bet if I show you a picture of a red cat. But if the wind is coming from the north and I show you a blue dog, I can make you 4 times more likely to buy. And these are called psychographics, and it's data that's gathered together across everywhere. I'm not saying it's woo-woo magic, but it's certainly a way that we can influence behavior and encourage people to buy, to play, help them engage with the brand.
That's friggin' terrifying.
Absolutely, but used for good, like the community of people who follow this podcast, our future is indeed bright.
Well, listen, I'm not going to say that we've ever had to use the expression on this podcast, use this for good, not evil, but we may have to use that today.
Yes.
That is, it is a little bit terrifying.
It- yeah,
The thing is, right, so there's obviously there's different ways of collecting data. And yeah, we've talked to some people in the past who do cookie free ways of collecting data, and it gives them good analytic strength, and yeah, it's an industry that collects absolutely tons of data, and it's an industry that understands in a rudimentary way the potential of that data. But what we don't have on an operator level generally is the manpower or the training to mine that data meaningfully. We do it broadly, but there's not a great deal of granularity in what we do. And you know, if you speak to addicts in recovery with gambling, they will talk about the scattergun approach of the advertising and how it's
Yep.
absolutely, it's being hit with a mallet all the time. You just think, given all the technology and the kind of things that you're talking about here, we can make things completely personalized. We can make things into a single vertical, an individual vertical, if you like. And yet we don't. We're not using these. We're not using our tools for good, John.
Well, I think there's two sides of the data coin that are really interesting. So one side of the data coin is that we want lots of options presented to us, and we want the computer to serve up ads and serve up games and to serve up content because it knows what we're going to do. Now, the other side of that is that that capability also means that we can deliver highly targeted content and messaging with sniper-like precision, laser precision to activate a particular message or activate a particular content. And this is a challenge the industry is facing. If you look at the Dutch advertising laws that came out last year, it's very specific about who you can target, who can see the ad, who can't see the ad, how you can report it. And the constant um, thing that's there is that the government can change the dial, right? So how can you react to that? So what you need is a programmatic engine. And that's one of the things that we do is we enable that ability to basically change the dial, tune into exactly who you want to target, make sure it's delivered every time with a unique experience. So every time you come in, you get a customized, unique experience just for you. That people who are on the, I don't gamble or opt me out get opted out, or people who shouldn't be getting clobbered over the head don't get clobbered over the head. And this is a technique that we've been doing in retail marketing for a long time. So I think what's here is, like you said, there's a wash of data. People don't necessarily know what to do with it. They don't necessarily know that you can take this laser focus view to it, and then they don't know how to turn it into a repeatable process. And there's a lot of science behind this. There's a lot of there's a lot of scalability around it, but ultimately, it turns into a better experience. We can find more customers, and we can fill the pipeline with players who would never have thought about coming to your platform before. We can find them and bring them over in a good way. So, not a sledgehammer, but through the correct messaging, we can get them to engage in a better way with the operators and with the platforms and with the games.
I've got. Sorry if that's me or you, but I've got two questions here. Um, one of which is directly related, one of which isn't. But that's my brain, unfortunately. Um, like say I go and search for something on Amazon or Google or whatever. I'll then spend the next 6 months being bombarded
Mm-hmm.
with ads for the thing that I searched for, even if I then bought it.
Exactly.
And we're talking about two giants of technology here. And I find that it blows. It just I don't know. Maybe there isn't a question there. One of the things, though, the thing with personalization, right? I don't know if other people are like this, but like my moods, they change. I'm fairly emotionally consistent. Don't get me wrong, but the things that I'm interested in doing change all the time. Like I might want to watch a rom com. I might want to watch a trashy horror film. It's probably 80-20 leaning towards the trashy horror film, but could go either way at any given time. People that like trashy horror films aren't generally recognized as liking rom coms. I do. It's like I've talked about dating apps quite a bit on this podcast because I've had such an awful experience using them, and the thing that pisses me off about dating apps is that it removes the possibility for surprise and chemistry
Yep.
because you're either asked a lot of questions about yourself and assumptions are made about what you will like as a result, or you're asked what you would like in another person. And then that's an idealized set of responses, and they're usually very narrow because it's all about having a broad funnel and making it into a narrow one. So you get these great tailored. What you actually get is really boring. Because generally, when you meet people in life, you're not attracted to people who are just like you. You're
Yeah.
attracted to people for a million and one different reasons. And my worry with the whole personalization thing is that people are actually going to be getting something that's just really, really, really fucking boring and that they've seen 100 times before. And that actually they'll be put off.
Well, and this is where the idea of the psychographics come up. So not only every time you go on Amazon, every time you use a credit card, you use a loyalty card, you do anything online, excuse me, it all gets pulled together in these big databases, and there are aggregators that bring all of this data together. And what we do is we create scores, and we'll create a score about the type of person who we want. And around that, so let's say that we want to attract women 25 to 35 who have a certain um, predilection for gaming, as an example. So we're able to use our algorithms, and we're able to put in enough randomness into the scoring, so that we can find lookalikes, not exact matches. And the idea of having the lookalike is that the lookalike is close enough that it matches what your behavior has been in the past. But it's a scoring, it's a data science thing that says, you know, Geminis typically like dating Geminis, but they also have a predilection for doing Capricorn or whatever else it would be. So using this data science gives you the ability to mix and match the scores. So it's not an exact predictability. It's more a case of we'll run different scenarios, we'll run different algorithm settings so we can find different sets of matches. So it becomes more like this, to an extent, a bit like speed dating. You might find you like this type of person or that type of person, but it's not about creating ubiquity. It's about creating audiences. So we find audiences that we believe will like this. So there's audiences like cats would be more but doesn't mean they don't like dogs. So we would be able to work that into the algorithms, and that's what's very successful in retail. So I think it kind of translates.
To be fair, you could think that I didn't like dogs just because I said the dog was a knob, and I might have told him to fuck off. And I have got a cat sitting under my nose right now for anybody who's listening to the audio version of this. No, I get what you're saying. It's the thing is with data, like I say, it seems to either be that you can get this super granular way of looking at it, and there are a few businesses doing it, and it is really really interesting, or you've got this shovel, for want of a better
Yeah.
way to put it, and most of us are shoveling. Um, and I think when you, particularly in iGaming, if you go online and you look at any 5 or 10 online casino brands, ultimately the offering is extraordinarily similar across them. There's very few
Yeah.
exclusives in terms of games, etc., etc. Or if they are, they're generally very time limited. And so it comes down to, I guess, bonusing and customer service, customer care.
Well, I'd argue it comes down to something else. It comes down what I've learned 15, 20 years in advertising is the power of the correct creative message is unparalleled. So if you're delivering the proper creative message in the right context, you'll get the audience and you'll get higher conversions. And if you look in the US, if you look in the UK at some of the great ads, the penguins at Christmas. The penguins at Christmas is something that emotes. It creates a certain level of brand loyalty, and it creates a differentiator around brand affinity, how people work and how people act with your brand. if we take the data and use it with the correct creative messaging, you will bring different audiences into your world. Ultimately, they will use the same product. Ultimately, they'll sit down, they'll have they'll play 21, they'll play blackjack, they'll play baccarat, they'll play the slots, they'll eat a meal, whatever else. But what's the journey to get them there? The journey to get them there might be you deserve to pamper yourself because you work hard. You deserve to have a
Do.
flutter and a flirt. These are the things. So the messaging starts in a different way. And again, if you look at parallels in the US between what's done in car insurance ads, what's done in some of the retail ads, some of the more boring categories, you can see that things like comedy drives revenue, comedy drives audience, delivery of those ads changes what people's behavior is. At the end of the day, they're all buying a pint of milk. They're all buying a can of cat food or a can of soup. But it's the journey that gets them there that's powered by data. It creates a brand affinity, which means they come back more often, they stay more loyal. And that itself is takes away the need for that ubiquity. Because at the end of the day, if they have affinity with your brand because they have a connection with it, then you get much higher conversions. You get much higher LTV, lifetime value, from your customers, and this is something that scales and grows. So it's interesting, and it's a transition. It's not immediate, but as you do this, you can shift a market, you can create a category, you can block out your competitors by having that kind of affinity. And it's something that, again, this isn't new science. This is proven. I just don't think it's really done in the iGaming world as yet.
Do you think with your did you hear the dog then?
I did.
He's being jealous of the cat.
Speaking up
Do
for
you
himself.
do you think with the with your background specifically, the combination of sort of data fiend and creative advertising mind, do you think that's what do you feel a bit special to put it simply, because it's not that's not a combination you see very often.
Well, I think there's a bit of a secret sauce there. And the one thing I learned working with some of the best ad agencies out there is something to a creatable magic that you can do. So I'll give you an example. So we could take this creative magic, this thing that's worked for retail brands, and we could take it to LATAM. So LATAM's the flavor of the day. Everybody wants to go into LATAM. May not be as much data as they're used to. They're looking for audiences they may not know. There's a culture there that is like heavily football, heavily sports, samba, whatever else it is. So if we can help people find an audience through creative, something that resonates with them, you can bring 1 million people over to your brand who would never ever think about doing that. And if we give them the correct messaging, if you want to enter LATAM, how do you get 5 million people? How do you get 1 million people? You follow the secret sauce that we're talking about with data, and it lets you leapfrog past the slow market entry. So this is one of the places where we feel that there is a bit of a secret sauce and a bit of the Coca-Cola formula that you can apply in these different markets. Or given it's the week before St. Patrick's Day, you can make it like a pint of Guinness. There might be a slightly different taste everywhere, but overall it's the same. So we know it's something special. It's proven, and it's an accelerator for people who are in static markets. For people who are in the European markets that are pretty mature, you want to reinvigorate. You want to have a new way to engage and work within the laws. So again, there's different ways you can dial it, different ways you can do it. And the nice thing is you can see pretty awesome ROIs. One of the things we found in iGaming is when we talk about things like lifetime value, LTV, return on marketing investment, the other KPIs, sometimes we get met with a blank stare. So we're able to show here's a solid ROI based on this. Here's your market comps, and that's where you now have a repeatable roadmap for what you're doing. There's a great quote in advertising from Ogilvy, and he said, "People know they get a return from half of their money in advertising. They just don't know which half of their investment in advertising is working." The programmatic and data-driven stuff lets you know where you're getting your return. It lets you know what audience you're talking to. And we talk a lot about acquiring audience. So let's say you're going into Brazil. You want to buy an audience of men 30 to 35 who have this, and this. Creative message with the data, with the psychographics. You can basically buy your way into that audience and you can engage with that audience with a pretty predictable way of doing it. So it's an interesting approach to market entry. It's an existing kind of repeatable formula.
Okay. I'm going to ask you a stupid question now. What are you actually selling then?
We're selling acquiring audiences. We're selling acquiring players that would never have come to your brand before. We're
Okay,
selling,
but hang on. Let's then say, right, that potential, say we've got market share of 3%, right?
yep,
Which is obviously not great, probably not doing brilliantly, but 3% is 3%. Now, are you saying that you'll then make considerably more accessible the other 97% of actual gamblers? Or are you saying that in the wider world, we actually have a target of 100% of people? See what I mean? See the
exactly.
difference that I'm making there?
Yeah. And that's the thing is if you take on part of the science we use is called graph ID, and it's a lot about lookalikes. So there's the audience of people who are known gamblers, and then there's the audience of people who could be interested in engaging in gambling or in buying a product or in doing something. So people who may not gamble on a regular basis but can be brought in can expand out that audience. So it's expanding your addressable audience within the known world. And then it's about expanding out into other audiences, into other places that are adjacent, where you can bring in people who may not gamble every day, but they're playing games on their phone every day. Why can we not convert them? Why can we not bring them in? So you have a wider addressable audience and you have a deeper addressable audience. So it increases that overall scope of what you can do and how you can grow in all kinds of interesting ways.
Are you bringing a. Hang on. Now, you've talked about how using an appropriate creative can bring those people in. Is the creative a part of what your business is doing? Or do you advise the customer who has their own marketing department on a creative that might be effective for them?
Exactly. We prefer to advise, and you find people will have their own branding and everything else like that. Um, and again, creative is something that people take on at different levels, and they might decide that they just want to do the bog standard smiling people around a roulette machine, that's enough. You might
Certainly
find
my
that,
favorite.
yeah, you might find that it's interesting when I look in the States and there you see the two sides of it. You see, we're going to give you sign up today, we'll give you $1,000 and we'll match it and you're guaranteed, right? $1,000 sounds like a great offer, but for a value conscious shopper, like Walmart has 120 million people go through their doors every week. Most of them are value conscious shoppers. If you're saying to somebody that I'm going to give you $1,000 and that's a lot of money, they might be willing to gamble $10 or $5. So if you're targeting those audiences, they might not think that dressed up in the tux and going to the casino is something necessarily achievable on day one for them. there may be a different level of creative to go in. It might be the excitement of a horse race. It might be the excitement of a sports book. It might be something less overwhelming. It doesn't mean that there's not, potentially 100 million people you can address who are willing to put on $10 that weren't willing to do it before they saw your creative. So you can break it up. You pick your audiences, you pick your personas, you use the psychographics and the scoring to know what's likely to make them convert and what are the economics around making them convert. So, I'm growing up in Ireland, the Grand National was a big thing, right? Everybody put down a bet in the Grand National. Your granny did, your mom did, everybody, the local, everybody bet on that day, right? Because it was a cultural phenomenon, right? So you can use certain types of creative to bring on that kind of cultural engagement. Now, that might be the sledgehammer for some people. They're going, I'm just going to show, a blackjack hand and life is good. That's all I want to evoke. You might have people who really want to go broader and want to bring in those edge cases and get them to engage. And then a different type of creative might be there. So, long answer short, as we go through the process, we talk about who are the different personas of target clients. What's the economic value and the LTV that comes off of those potential acquisitions? And then you match them up against the different types of creative. Now, honestly, certain types of creative is expensive, right? Certain types of creative can be a risk, right? You might not want to do it, right? But it gives you that ability to plan out and say, here's the audiences I want to go after, here's the investment, here's what the conversion price would be, and here's the journey to get them on board. It gives you a more holistic kind of view to it. And again, going back to that Grand National thing, we might start with a Grand National. We might then have them put on a bet on a pony once a week. If you go to Brazil, what you'll find is people have this wonderful engagement in soccer. They'll typically, my friends all have 2 or 3 teams in different leagues. There might be a different way to engage with those audiences. There might be a different way to engage where Granny will put on 10 Hey Ice because, Tommy, her grandson, supports flamingos, right? So there's all kinds of ways that you can do this. And again, it depends where you're getting the best return on your investment and what you want that lifetime value to be. So there's lots of options. And and certainly we always advise use the creative that you have until you get um, comfortable with the science. And once you're comfortable with the science, you look for a 2x or 3x return out of the initial investment, right? Get comfortable with what programmatic can do, right? And then you start, it gives you that ability to build up into more advanced and sophisticated approaches. So typically, if you do it right to start, you should get 2x return on your investment, and then you can ramp it up from there. And you'll always hit different limits, but it gives you that roadmap to do it, and a very scientific and numbers based, performance based approach to doing this. So lots of ways to now that the cat's left the table to skin said cat, but well, um, but it's all about options, and it's about what the culture is of the operator and of the client.
Okay, three things. One of them's a nightmare thing. Do you know one of my mum's favourite things that she ever did in her life was she got to meet Red Rum.
Oh wow,
Yeah,
yeah,
she was like a fucking giddy school kid. It's funny
yeah,
as anything. But Red Rum. It is like meeting a beetle.
yeah.
Maybe better because there's only one Red Rum.
It's certainly better than
Um,
sugar.
yeah, if she met Shergar, well, she probably met him now, but not in a nice way. um, I'm wondering about this. I'm wondering about the psychographic, right? So say I'm a client, right, and I come to you and I say, "Holy shit, we need some more money." There's 100% of people out there, and we haven't got barely a gnat's cock of them. Do I then, as the customer, do I say to you, "This is the ideal customer that we'd like. This is the age group we'd like to go after. This is the demographic we'd like to go after." Because I mean, and surely not everybody's going to come to you and they're going to go, "I'd like the people that spend lots of money, please, and nobody else." I mean, it's going to be like, is it that the customer comes to you and says, "These are the kind of people that we think we would resonate with. This is who we've had good retention with. This is where we think our best value is." And you then go and you basically work with a huge, great bulldozer, and you push these people like food into a goose's gullet,
To make the best pass out.
and
Yeah.
and you basically are funneling to get that set of customers, and you come back to me
So,
and
so
say,
the
"Look,
first,
this is how does it work?"
so the first thing that we do is we take what we call their first party data, and that first party data is the data they currently have on their platforms. They might have it in their CRM. They might have it. They'll tend to have databases of people who never converted. They'll have transaction data. They'll have all kinds of data. And what we'll do is we'll do a modeling exercise, and we'll ask the client who they think their best customer is, and then we'll go in and we'll analyze from their first party data who we find their best customer actually is. And sometimes it can be quite different. When you talk about people who come back more, people who do different things. But we start with who's your best customer today? And that's kind of the starting point, because you also want to move from A to B. So who's our best customer today? Um, what are the characteristics and scoring we put around that? So we'll do segmentation around that, and that segmentation will tell us who they are, um, what things it ties to that they buy. So then we'll bring in things like events, promotions. We'll do a full analysis and say, here's from your client base, here's what is your best customer today. Then we'll enrich that data um, based on some modeling that we do. So it may be that we want to find 10,000 of each type of best customer model that they have a week. So, we want to find men 45 to 50 who go for a drink on a Friday and have a BMW and like the soccer, whatever else. We want to find 50,000 more of them. We'll go and then we find 50,000 more of that particular existing best customer. Sometimes we find that the existing customers point towards a higher return customer, a new type of model, somebody who's slightly different. We'll do correlations. We do all different kinds of covariance analysis and things like that. And we will provide options and proposals to the client and say, well, what if you looked at this demographic or that demographic? Here are these different types of audience. So at the very least, we start with who's your best customer today, who's really your best customer. Let's find 10,000, 50,000, 100,000 more of those on a regular basis. We'll
Okay.
also propose new audiences. So it's like we want the grandma to come in and bet on flamencos. How can we get grandma to do that, to be supportive of the grandson, or what are those adjacent audiences? And again, if you're building up your core, then you might be willing to do some exploratory on these adjacent audiences, see what your success is to bring them in or not. Um, and because this is continuous data, we're constantly learning. So that as you bring in the new audiences, we're saying, okay, well, your new best customer is now a hybrid. Your new best customer is now morphing into something different. And here's how we change the algorithm slightly. So men 45 to 50 who own a Seat, who have a mortgage that's 15 years in, and who take a bus ride more than 2 hours. They happen to be what the algorithms have learned is that new best customer. And we would dial on particular laser on that. So it's continuous optimization. Going back to your earlier question, we'll be looking at what creative is effective. So as we run these things and we're seeing for this audience, we might run three different types of creative in three different cities, right? Different clothes, different backgrounds, different things like that. And we track how that converts. As we track how that converts, then that lets us further optimize what we're doing. The big thing for the client, for the operator, is that at any stage they can say, right, we're cut, right? Thanks very much. They can either bring it in, roll their own. They now have a bigger database of active, scored, segmented clients who they know behave in a certain way, so that a lot of clients get sophisticated and they want to increase their own marketing capabilities, or they want to do anything. So they've increased the value of their data asset themselves as they built this up. So this is the other thing: is great, I get players, but I'm also building a core asset, which is data. Because data, so many enterprises, data is lifeblood, data is your rocket fuel. So as we build this behavioral data, as we build this performance data, this conversion data, they've now increased the size of their asset, which brings you into the next part of data monetization. So as much as we want to know everything about those people who go into a big retailer, and those 100 million people who go in, and we want to find the triggers that make them go in to buy shovels and to buy socks and to buy milk. There's also a market out there where those retailers want to know, ooh, of our 100 million people who go through our doors every week, 50 million of them gamble. What makes them do that? What's their behavior? So it creates a market um, for the operators to sell on their data. Now, data sales, two-edged sword, right? You've got GDPR, you have to privacy enable it, you have to declare, people have to be able to opt out. There's a bunch of things that you have to deal with. These are all problems that we've dealt with before. But what's interesting is for an operator, there is the ability now, they've built this asset of data that's rich with behavior. There's all kinds of people out there who are interested in buying that data. So what we talk about as well is, okay, so you get to a certain stage. Is the Coca-Cola formula embedded in the data that you have? If it is, don't sell it. But if it's just selling it as here's data that came out of our special formula that doesn't give away your intellectual property, then there's a whole market out there for selling on data. And that again is something that's very lucrative. It may not be as lucrative as a full sports book, but it's money that you don't want to leave in your other set of pants. There's enough money to come out of that. And it gives you that ability to create ancillary revenue coming through. And everybody likes a nice bit of repeatable revenue that comes through that aims in your valuation, that helps in your profitability. So there's layers to this, and these again are layers where, as long as you have your privacy sorted out, as long as you have your compliance aspects sorted out, you can't resell data. Um, a lot of people think that because they have GDPR from Europe, they're covered in Brazil. They're not. Brazil has its own law called LGPD. There's 130 privacy laws out there. So we help them with that. You put the data wrapper around it, enrich your data, monetize your data, and then potentially sell your data. Um, it's a nice ongoing revenue model that pays for itself pretty quickly, I think.
Years ago, I used to do this contract publishing job for a publishing company. And it'd been contracted out to them from somebody else. And the guy that was in charge of farming it out to us was, imagine if Tim Burton was an actual tramp. That's what this guy looked like, right? He looked like Tim Burton had been eaten by a zombie and shat out, then dragged through a hedge. And like, he didn't wear a belt, he wore a piece of rope around his waist, and he was totally paranoid. And maybe he was just prescient, maybe he was just ahead of his time. And he was right-handed, but he would only sign his signature with his left hand so nobody could copy it,
Yep.
because basically it was never the same twice.
Yep.
So what's the actual point in that as proof of your identity? But anyway, so he was obviously a little bit Looney Tunes. But given what you do, right, it wouldn't surprise me if you only ever paid in cash and used no social media. Because you must be looking at things and thinking, no, you're not getting my fucking data. I know what you're going to do with it. Do you
You
live
know,
in fear?
I went through that. I go through that periodically, but then I get lazy and I want Netflix or whatever else it is to serve me up with my choices. I want the world to be as smart as it can be for me. And you come to this, it's that digital realization that this is the way it is, right? There's no point fighting the tide. It's just the way it is. Now you can be very smart around your personal data. You can be very smart around how you protect your digital identity, and that's a whole other discussion. It's increasingly important. It's one of the reasons things like blockchain, when they sort out some of the operational issues, become exceedingly important. Um, if you look at the movie Ready Player One, right? Great view of the future, you know, NFTs, your digital identity, how you protect it, all that kind of thing. But you cannot look sideways these days without creating a digital signature. It's so hard. So I just embrace it. I just get on with it. And I know that I'll benefit from it. I know that there's data protection laws out there that put regulators in place that make sure that people don't go absolutely nutty and crazy. And if you look at one of the good things coming out of GDPR is you do have regulators who are sitting there and they're going, you're not going to do this. So regulation has its place. It keeps us safe. And, you know, there was an interesting thing last week. European Court of Justice came out against the IAB around certain practices that the gaming world and direct advertisers were doing to fool people into pressing a button, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's no point, you know, you can spend as much time doing something shifty as you can doing something properly. And if you do it properly, you don't have to worry. You can get on with it and you probably make more money doing it properly rather than trying to figure out the back door. Philosophical discussion, uh, but the world that we have, they know so much about us anyway that you might as well lean into it and not think about it too much.
I have one last question for you. And this is with your data head on, with your marketing head on, with your creative head on. Right? There's a chap who I'm lucky enough to know, um, and he is one of the main reasons I still use Twitter. A chap called Jamie Salzberg. He's never been to Salzburg, but he does have a relative that has been now, so that's good. Um, Now, Jamie has a really interesting take on RG stuff, right? And his background or his bread and butter is sort of branding, design, brand building, and he recognizes he's also a recovering gambling addict, and so he's got a really interesting take on all of the RG stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, he looks at it all and he goes, "Hey, do you know what all of this has got in common? It's all shit." Um, well, it is, and in this world, think of the technologies we've been talking about now, and we're still doing blanket RG stuff.
Yeah.
Because the point is surely to say the right message to the right person at the right time,
Yes. Exactly the
and
point.
it's got to be possible. So, how can we use such technologies for good? What would you do?
So we worked on a brand about 5 years ago that had fallen to number five in Europe. Took 10,000 photos, delivered an experience. We grew them up to number two, right across Europe. Um, and I see the power of this. I've worked on campaigns where a big CPG brand gave away cell phones in Africa under the guise of it was, people don't have internet to their houses in these parts of Africa, but everybody has a
Yep.
Samsung phone, right? And what happened there was that they gave away cell phones so that they could advertise. It came out of their marketing budget, but there was a whole load of health information came through it, and it became one of the primary routes for delivering health information into impoverished communities.
Hmm.
So that was something that kind of caught my attention because, okay, here's how we pay for it. Never trust something that's totally altruistic, made sense, and it became a cultural part of the cultural environment. So I think there's a way to do, you know, um, almost like social investment in it, that if we're doing a certain amount of advertising for profit, are we doing stuff for good? Is it like the Sesame Street example where it's public advertising that, you know, or public sector TV or public sector content or things like that that can raise all the boats? So I'd like to see it to be kind of the version of social housing where, we do this targeted advertising, but a certain part of it goes back into enriching the community and dealing with some of the problems that are there. And I think there's more than enough money to go around doing it. And I think because of the targeting that you can do, it means that you can deliver better things like healthcare messaging in that African example, better kind of social things that you can do. Um, and I think those things can live side by side. So that's kind of my if I had a billion pounds and a magic wand, kind of how I would try and leverage it up for some good.
Okay. The cat's back
Woohoo!
for anybody who's just on the audio version. So if you hear the dog squeaking, it's jealousy because the cat's sitting on my desk. Um, I'm just gonna have to throw him off the desk, dude. You gotta go. Sorry, bud. There you go. So anyway, um, okay. I think I'm out of questions. Maybe one more. You do have a slight Irish accent, I think, John. Um,
Yes.
did you go to school with Finton?
No, no, I've never actually met Finton. We just
Really?
connected up over. Though I would say that Irish people beat LinkedIn 6 degrees of separation by about four. I think everybody's connected to everybody. But
Hmm.
like the
Well, that's why I was
states,
asking.
yeah, yeah, it's you walking down the street, you'll meet someone and you'll know their cousin and you'll know someone. So I'm pretty
Seriously,
sure.
Finton doesn't believe me about this, but Ludlow is the same, and Ludlow is considerably smaller than Ireland. Yeah, honestly, it's really odd. So, just here's a couple of wonderful examples. One day, I was walking down Oxford Street in London. It was pretty early. It was about sort of 6:30, 7 a.m., and Oxford Street's deserted at that time. Walking down the street, walking towards me is the sax player from my old band in Shropshire. All right, John. All right, Mish. How's it going? Yeah, good. You? Yeah. Okay, bye.
So I love
Like
that.
it was the most normal thing in the world. One day, I'd been to one of my old school friends' wedding, and later in the week, so that was back in Ludlow. Later in the week, problems on the tube. I wasn't going far, but I ended up having to go through the middle and then down. Not on a line I would normally be on, not anywhere I would normally be at that time of day. Tube door opens at a station. I can't even tell you what the station was. Doors open. There's a brother. All right, John. All right, Heath. How's it going? Yeah, good. You? Yeah, enjoyed your sister's wedding. Fucking hell.
Love it.
But to people that are from South Shropshire, it's not even odd when it happens. It's just like you just know you're going to bump into somebody from Ludlow. But here's my all-time favourite, I think. Maybe my second favourite. I was at a mate's stag weekend in Torquay, southwest of England. I was a long way from home. We went out on a fishing boat in Tor Bay early. And the dude driving the boat, he says, I'm just going to pick up the next people and then I'm going to take you around the other side and drop you off. Pick up the next people. And it's Ricky that I used to work in the video shop in Ludlow with. And he gets on the boat and he goes, all right, John. All right, Ricky, how's it going? Yeah, good. You? Yeah, good. Thanks. He drops us off. I walk up the road to the cash machine and there's 5 other people from Ludlow at the cash machine. And they're not even there with Ricky.
Oh, love it.
They're an entirely different thing completely. And it's like, it's walking around with your eyes open. Everybody knows somebody from Ludlow, but they just don't necessarily know yet that they're from Ludlow.
I was in Mexico airport and I was on a quick trip there and I had to buy t-shirts for my kids. It was a few years ago. And there was a group of old age pensioners. They were faffing about picking what t-shirts they'd buy and everything else. And I was going for my flight. I had to get my flight. I was late. Kids will be pissed if I don't have the t-shirts for them. And I was just going to go gangbusters through the oldies like a ball through Skittles. And some voice from above said, stop, be on your Sunday best and be the most polite. It was like this resonating voice. And I stood there and I said, excuse me, would you ever so much mind if I grabbed that little t-shirt there and everything else? And this is bustling Mexico City airport. And this little lady turned around and went, there you go, Jonathan, and tell your mother I said hi. And it's scared. And who would you be now? And it's Mrs. McMahon. I work with her in the telephone exchange. Tell her I'll drop in for a cup of tea. Well, I was the most humbled man you have ever seen. And I walked as quietly onto that airplane and had myself a drink, but I'm with you.
That is very good. Okay. John, thank you for coming on the podcast. I'm sorry Finton wasn't here. It probably turns out you're like third cousins or something.
Mm-hmm.
Although, I mean, sometimes I think he might be faking being Irish.
No, I think Finton's legit. I have that feeling, but we'll have to verify it over a pint. And this is the month where he will, the green will shine through on him. So, there's a mission there.
Yeah. I won't mention it to him. And if he doesn't mention it, then I know he's fake.
Exactly. The proof is in the pint.
It's a good call because he's always like, oh, I know where the best Guinness is here, there, whatever. Yeah, but do you drink it?
This is the test.
You might know it because you know some real Irish people. But anyway, Jon Bourke, thank you for joining. I was going to say us, the royal us. I suppose I could count the cat and the dog.
Yeah, absolutely.
They've been part of the experience. Thank you for joining us, and good luck with everything. I tell you what, Finton will probably listen to this and he'll probably say, why didn't you ask him such and such? So there's a chance that we might give you a shout back.
Perfect. It sounds good. Anything I can do to help.
If you've enjoyed this episode of the Gambling Files podcast, please find us on LinkedIn. Give us a big, juicy, succulent like. That nearly went wrong. You can find us under the name The Gambling Files Podcast. You can find us on Twitter under The Gambling Files. I think the handle is just @Gambling Files. You can connect to myself, Jon Bruford, or Finton Costello, also on LinkedIn. We're also both on Twitter. And you can find all of our previous episodes at www.thegamblingfiles.com. If you enjoyed it, please share, tell your friends, tell your family, tell your colleagues, and we'll see you next time.